Ever so often, the discourse of how boring Genshin's main characters are will come up. People will give their 2 cents and go about their merry way. The general misconception that people have with the Traveler is that they're too quiet, which in turn makes them boring. Or, people will refute this claim by saying they're self-insert and are supposed to be quiet so they can represent the player. Both of which I don't really agree with. The Traveler being classified as a self-insert just doesn't fit with the way they are written. But first of all, what is a self-insert? Self-insert, or better known as silent protagonists, exist for the sole reason of allowing the player to see themselves as the character. So they don't talk, they don't have opinions, thoughts, and/or personalities of their own, and their dialogue choices can often vary to give the player a sense of choice in how they want to portray the character. Some of these things don't really apply to the Traveler. Let's get into why. If you enjoy this, please subscribe, it really helps me out. Starting with the silent part of a silent protagonist. It is well known that the Traveler does not speak much. His VA has more lines in the live streams than in-game, though in certain scenarios it is implied that the Traveler is speaking, it's just not voiced for some reason. I can't for the life of me figure out why they would choose not to voice the Traveler. I would get if the Traveler was a self-insert and the developers don't want the players feeling like they have to sound a certain way. The Traveler really isn't written like a self-insert. Them not being voiced does make one appreciate the times when they are voiced, but still, moving on. Though they don't talk in a voiced capacity, they do talk in-game. Next, they have a lot of opinions that the player might not necessarily agree with. They have thoughts and personalities of their own. The Traveler and the Abyss sibling have canon names that they refer to as in-game, albeit only by each other. I don't think having canon names is a quality of silent protagonists. Despite the fact that Lumine and Aether call each other by their names, only Paimon and Dainsleif know the Traveler's real name, and only Dane and Aether refer to the Abyss sibling as Lumine. Aether goes through Shevat with the name we the player give them, but it's more like a fake name, probably to hide their identities, which makes sense considering when they first came to Shevat, they were attacked, so them hiding behind a fake name to protect themselves is a valid theory. I do hope the Traveler one day tells their name to certain characters in the future, as a way to show a deepening in their trust and relationship. Personality and opinions. Aether and Lumine aren't interchangeable, gender-bent self-insert versions of themselves. They are siblings, more specifically twins, with their own personalities and abilities, with Lumine being stronger while Aether is faster. Even some characters and NPCs have different dialogues depending on the twin that you choose, though it doesn't really change the story and there are an in-between. But that just further establishes that the twins aren't the same people. The Traveler's personality is shown all throughout the game. He isn't just some silent protagonist with no personality. He has set boundaries and isn't afraid to voice them. He actively voices who and what he likes and doesn't like, who he chooses to trust and be wary of. For example, despite his many encounters with Child, he still shows some mistrust around him for good reason. Him warning Yoimiya during the photography event about Child is very on brand and makes a lot of sense when you think of all that he has gone through in the hands of the Fatui and Child himself. Some people were upset that he was bashing Child, but you don't almost get killed by someone and their people and then just trust them like nothing happened, especially when they start interacting with a friend of yours, especially someone as good and pure-hearted as Yoimiya. You would want to protect them. He was being a good friend, and besides, it's not like it made Yoimiya hate Child anyway. Him choosing not to trust Lini when he found out they were Fatui further exemplifies this. Yes, he has met Fatui that are actually good and we have helped them, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Fatui are a mostly evil organization that has caused the Traveler and those around him harm. Regardless of what the player themselves think of Child, whether you like Child and Lini and the Fatui or you don't, the Traveler is very quick not to trust Fatui, rightfully so, but also can be convinced to help them if he sees that they need his help and they aren't doing anything bad. Like during the last act of the Fontaine Archon quest, we were perfectly fine with working with the Knave because we had the same agenda. We wanted to save Fontaine. And in different world quests, we would help different Fatuses. Fatui? We've helped different Fatui members before when they needed our help. So the Traveler isn't just blindly hating the Fatui. They hate them for a reason, a very justifiable reason. But if a Fatus that isn't bad was to ask for their help, they would help. And despite the fact that Lini hid such an important information from the Traveler, like being a part of the Fatui, you don't just hide that from your attorney. He still defended them, which takes a very strong person. Takes a kind person to do. Anyways, he makes jokes. He can be sarcastic at times. He flirts. He uses pickup lines on other characters. He gets angry and frustrated when people ask too much of him or he's being ordered around, and he tries to understand those around him. He isn't afraid to stand his ground. For example, during the Inazuma Archon quest, he didn't want to help, and he stated that he only wanted to have an audience with Raiden Shogun, and when Rosaria said blood relatives are overrated in that one Razor event, due to his attachment and love for his sibling, the Traveler disagreed with her. He shows a lot of importance to family and friends with how he interacts with all the playable characters and NPCs. He isn't an errand running goody two-shoes just because he tries to help everyone that he believes needs his help. That's just how he was raised, which is talked about in his voice line. Him wanting to help those that need his help isn't him being walked all over. It is a part of his personality. He is just a caring person. I have a feeling that the people that don't like how friendly and caring the traveler is are the same people who classify characters like Tanjiro and Deku as weak and annoying. Because God forbid a character not be moody and emo every single time. Even then, even though he's a good person, even though he's caring, he isn't afraid to fight those that disagree with him if he sees that talking isn't working. He is shown to be quite proud of his achievements and likes to be compensated for his efforts. He won't do free work unless he cares for the person in question. Aether's personality is shown through the dialogue choices we get. The biggest complaint with Genshin's dialogue is that they're basically the same thing most of the time, and they don't really have an impact on the story. And to that I say it might have been on purpose. Genshin is a linear story, not a choose your own adventure with multiple endings, so it makes sense that you wouldn't have a choice in the path that you take. And also, the traveler has an established personality that Hoyoverse is trying to flesh out. They're not going to give the players too much leeway to do whatever they want with the traveler, considering the fact that the traveler is supposed to act a certain way. Relationships. When it comes to relationships, it is shown that he cares deeply for those around him and has different levels of appreciation for each of the playable characters that he interacts with. We have, I think, 73 characters as about recording this video in Genshin, and each character has a varying level of closeness to the traveler. The characters we are most close with are like Nahida, Shao, Ayaka, Zhongli, Kazuha, etc. And the ones we're not as close with would be like Dori, Ayato, Kujosara, etc. How close he is to each character depends on the development of his relationship with that character. Like his character development with Shao is different from his relationship with someone like Ayato, because he interacts with Shao a lot more than he does with Ayato. Another example would be his relationship with Child, as opposed to Linny. Despite the fact that they're both Fatui and he does not trust them, the traveler seems to trust Child more than Linny, because we've known him longer. We know more things about him, and he didn't hide the fact that he was Fatui from us. This doesn't erase the fact that he still doesn't trust Child, but comparing it to Linny, you can see the different levels of trust or mistrust. His older sibling and younger sibling dynamic with Paimon is also shown pretty well in game. I know a lot of people say that Paimon never lets the traveler talk, but I like to think that that's just their dynamic. Call it wishful thinking. Paimon does the talk, and the traveler does the walk. I would prefer if she would talk less though, and the traveler actually spoke more. That would be nice to hear, but I don't think Hoyo is going in the direction of letting the traveler speak more. I think in the entire arc on course, they spoke like maybe 5 lines. Conclusion. His personality isn't really hidden in game. I believe people just tend to ignore it since it isn't voiced most of the time. The traveler talks a lot, but for some reason Hoyoverse has decided not to use their voice actors outside their lines in the profile, and occasional times they decide to talk. I like the voice actors for the travelers, but they don't get to speak like ever. It's always a nice treat when I do hear them speaking, and I do hope we get more and more of them in the upcoming chapters. Fontaine, I'm not sure if we had more of the traveler speaking or not. It doesn't feel like it had more, but to be fair, if they went from giving them 2 lines to like 5 lines, I probably wouldn't notice. Anywho, seeing people mischaracterize him as a weak errand boy that obeys everyone's command as if he has no spine and personality is eye-rolling. I'm not saying he's the best written Genshin character ever. Trust me, I wish he was, but to completely ignore the personality he does have is just an injustice to his character. He's just one of the many characters that get mischaracterized because either people don't read dialogue or they don't understand the concept of a character changing over time. So whatever misconception they hold for a character when they were first released, they hold it till now, which can be very damaging for the image of a character. Or this happens a lot in, I'm gonna ramble a little, this happens a lot in anime fandoms where a character will have one thing attached to their personality, and that will be the only defining trait of their personality. An example would be Kageyama Torio from Haikyuu. He likes milk. That's it. His entire personality in the fandom is just, oh, the man likes milk. Even though there's a lot more complexity to his personality, that is literally all people ever talk about him. Some characters in Genshin have this problem too, where people attach one small thing to their entire personality. And it's aggravating, to say the least. Anyways, that's enough rambling for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, comment your opinions, and see you whenever. Bye bye.